Taking a glimpse into the character of Hedda Gabler, the heroine of Henrik Ibsen's play bearing the self-same title, the readers may be led to question first and foremost as to why the play is not titled Hedda Tesman, as she was called after marrying George Tesman. Well, the simple answer to this question is that despite the marriage to Tesman, Hedda remains much the same as she was prior to marrying Tesman, the daughter of General Gabler belonging to the aristocracy. Hedda happened to be spoilt enough not to adhere to the conventional role of a young woman of her times. Set against the backdrop of the small town called Christiania, the modern-day Oslo, the capital of Norway, the small community knew one another well. Hedda, popular by virtue of her rare beauty and enviable charm, is known to be most sought after, presenting a fascinating figure riding the horse in her black riding gear, riding being one of her chief passions. Enjoying the tastes of men, Hedda is shown to be toying with her father's pistols rather than pursuing any feminine interests. She excels at playing the piano, that being perhaps the only one positive interest. Shown to be a popular society woman, in her own words, she had spent her life dancing away and was not growing any younger. Deviating from the norms of the conventional late 19th century woman, Ibsen entitled his heroine with a dubious and ambiguous personality, thus her persona being laden with complexities and varied layers of behavioral and psychological intricacies that not only is it difficult for the people around her to understand her, but even for the readers, it is a mental and a moral challenge to decipher the character of Hedda. And without doubt, it is an interesting challenge for the GCSE students to decode this character, getting into the many folds of depths created by the dramatist. Being the daughter of General Gabler belonging to the aristocracy, it is a step down for Hedda to be a part of the bourgeois after marrying Tesman. 6 months into the marriage, Hedda still sees herself as the daughter of General Gabler more than the wife of Tesman. Unable to accept and adapt herself into the new role of a wife, Hedda can expect nothing but unhappiness for herself. Her life is shown to revolve around the lounge or behind the curtains. She is not given to anything required of a wife, such as a keen and patient homekeeping, waiting patiently and lovingly for the homecoming of the husband, or pursuing any feminine interests such as reading, embroidery, or painting, some of the common interests followed by the Victorian women. Even the playing of the piano comes at times of emotional distress, as she perhaps tries to give vent to her emotions through playing the piano. A marriage which was more of a contract accepted by Hedda only since despite several suitors, Tesman seemed to hold the best promise. He had not only offered to take care of her, but his prospective professorship made him the most eligible bachelor. In a way, Hedda seems to have done Tesman a favor by accepting his offer of marriage. Unlike any typical woman for whom the idea of womanhood and motherhood may occupy the topmost priority in her life, there seems to be no urge for motherhood on Hedda's part. Any remarks made by Tesman about how beautiful she looked and fuller than before are only met with scorn from Hedda. She seems not the least bit happy and proud of the fact that she was carrying a child. This play has been one of the most filmed among Ibsen's plays, the role of Hedda being among the most coveted. Many of the top actresses such as Kate Blanchett, Ingrid Bergman, Sheridan Smith, and Roxana Hope have played the role, delivering a different aspect of her personality. The role played by Ingrid Bergman in the television production in 1963 does tremendous justice in capturing the flamboyant, arrogant, and vivacious Victorian woman who is yet at the same time repressed, struggling to break free from the shackles best perceived by herself alone. Being proud, arrogant, and impertinent, Hedda considers herself superior to Tesman household, looking down upon everyone starting from Berta to the aunts and Tesman himself. Soon after Hedda's arrival, Berta feels insecure about not being able to satisfy the new mistress. Indifferent, cold, and ungrateful, Hedda does not seem to appreciate anything that Tesman tried his level best to provide for her. For instance, the Fox Villa, which she had expressed a desire to live in, is purchased by Tesman beyond his immediate means, and for which the aunts have used up their annuity, yet it seems to offer her no joy. Hedda only scorns at Aunt Julie, showing her down by complaining about the hat which had been left in the lounge, referring to it as if it belonged to the servant, and shows no desire to be polite. Hedda hates the smell of lavender and dried rose leaves that have an odor of mortality about it, as she refers to the flowers brought by the aunt, which reveals her overall repugnance for the life she lived in Tesman's house. Whether it was Aunt Julie's bonnet in the lounge, or the smell of lavenders, or the open window, all of Hedda's reactions to the new stepping in into Tesman's life are negative and marked by dissatisfaction. There are hints about the class distinction as the aunt tells Tesman that she invested on her gorgeous new bonnet on Hedda's account so that the latter would not be ashamed if they happened to go out together. Tesman is apologetic towards the aunt, as they could not give her a seat in the carriage because of the pile of boxes Hedda had to bring with her. All of this stresses upon the importance of material things for Hedda, and hint upon the class consciousness which held great importance in her life. Being self-centered, ungrateful, and intrinsically satisfied, Hedda shows not the least bit of appreciation for Tesman, who even spent a great deal on their honeymoon to Italy, as he accepted the fact that travelling with the lady makes it more expensive. The 6 months of honeymoon seem to have borne no fruit except the fact that Hedda gets pregnant, a pregnancy which is never spoken of in the entire play except a few indirect hints, and something that Hedda seems least excited about. No matter whether Tesman bought the Fox Villa for Hedda or promises to buy her a brand new piano with his first salary or provide every luxury befitting the bourgeois, there seems to be no place for happiness and satiety in their lives. Soon after her arrival, Hedda expresses disgust about the aunts, saying that Aunt Rena is always sick and certainly does not have much respect for Aunt Julie either. Her mention of, "oh, these everlasting aunts," highlights her insinuating remarks. Her disrespect for the aunts, who were really looked up to by Tesman, suggests the wide emotional distance between Tesman and herself. Hedda shows no respect for whatever is important for Tesman, be it the aunts or the books. "I know of no reason why I should be happy. Perhaps you can give me one," is one of the most blatant expressions of Hedda's despair. Such a statement made by her points intensely on the existential question of the times, which reflects the hollowness that lay within the very being of the characters. Why do characters like Hedda feel so dissatisfied about what they have? As for her, she in a way prides herself in the fact that she took pity on the learned man. She becomes idiomatic. "As you make your bed, so you must lie," as she comments upon the hollow nature of the starting of the relationship between the two. The varied images of Hedda reveal her to be one of Ibsen's most fascinating heroines. What makes her so uniquely special is her contrariness. Ibsen has created in her a woman who is attractive to all, yet inaccessible. She is passionate, yet cold and impenetrable. Critics have called her a true type of degenerate, incapable of yielding herself, body and soul, to the man she loves. A complete perversion of womanhood, and even a dangerous example of the new woman, a female character common in fiction in the 1890s, when women were actively demanding equality with men. So this brings us to the question, is Hedda a tragic heroine for whom life's dealings were unfair towards her? Is she a victim or a victimizer? A manipulator? A master planner or a victim of her own plotting? Undoubtedly, Hedda rejects her womanhood and motherhood, which form the source of dissatisfaction in her life, pushing her towards the disillusionment with life which ultimately push her to her dismal end, thus making her a tragic heroine. Hedda seems to have no vision of what exactly would make her happy. Living in the world of illusions, Hedda toys with her dreams and ideas much as she toys with the pistols, thus becoming a victim of self created misery. The negativity generated within her own self makes her a victimizer, a manipulator, a master planner who wants to destroy everything around her. Rather than becoming a creator, she becomes a destroyer. As the play progresses, we get to know Hedda more closely. Act 2 reveals the close and rather mysterious relationship between Judge Brack and Hedda, who indulge in a cozy little chat, referring to the closeness shared between them in the past. Does it not seem like a whole eternity since our last talk? Brack's further elaboration, our last confidential talk, last tete a tete, clearly shows how close the two have been. The questions that arise in our mind are: is it Hedda's past that comes in the way of her settlement in marriage to Tesman? Evidently, Brack has known Hedda very closely and on purpose states that she must have had a great honeymoon, to which Hedda expresses complete disgust and frustration. The note of sarcasm in Brack's tone is unavoidable. Is it the inner unbridled cravings and unanswered urges that cause her the unhappiness? Or is it the basic inability to find happiness and suffer dissatisfaction in everything that makes happiness elusive to people like Hedda? This is what forms the core element of Hedda's character. Being flippant and vivacious, we can imagine Hedda Gabler to have shared a special closeness with Judge Brack. Evidently, she has relied upon Judge Brack in the past. Perhaps if Hedda had known greater satisfaction in the present life, she would not need a persona like him in her present life as a third. However, the ground reality that she finds life empty urges her to look for substitutes to supplement her life. As Hedda gets more trapped in the coming chain of events, the role of Brack in her life becomes more crucial. What is Hedda's concept of human relationships or of life itself? Is Brack a confidant? Hedda's expressed desire, long for someone to make a third on our travels, seems to be ideally fitted by Brack. But why does she want a third? This clearly brings forth Hedda's dissatisfaction and disillusionment in marriage. Brack appears to be a sounding board for Hedda's inner fears, doubts, and anticipations. He is like an ever-pervasive threat that lingers in the corner, overshadowing her marriage and happy life in the future. Brack, like Lovberg, is a segment of the past which follows her like a shadow, not allowing her to fructify in the present. Hedda trusts him and confides in him to an extent which proves her naivety and gullibility. Is she a manipulator who is naive and gullible at the same time? It is this duality in Hedda's character which propels her towards her catastrophic end, making her a tragic heroine. Did Hedda love Tesman at all? Was their marriage born out of love? Or was it her own insecurity and her hankering after an affluent life that led her to marry Tesman? Was it greed and the dreams of a comfortable, secure life which she thought would be well provided to her by Tesman, a potential professor? Is it that Tesman would place her in the select circle which led her to accept his proposal of marriage? There seems to be no doubt that it was Hedda's greed and selfishness that steered her through every relationship and led her to marry Tesman. It was the bourgeois concerns that prevailed over every other concern in life. The dream of a rich social life was an illusion that made Hedda decide to marry Tesman. Her comment that she took pity on the learned man reveals such arrogance and pride as makes us think that would a person like Hedda ever be able to love another? As Brack makes the announcement that Tesman may find his appointment deferred longer than he desired or expected, and that his nomination may perhaps be made conditional on the result of a competition, Tesman is completely alarmed. On the other hand, Hedda remains indifferent, rather feeling excited to witness the competition between the two and to see who wins. We see her in the role of a manipulator here, who seems to be taking pleasure in the ongoings of the events. The only thing that matters to the selfish Hedda is that she would not be in a select circle. She derides the marriage since Tesman shall not be able to fulfill the part of the pact that they were to go to society to keep open house because of the lack of finances. Her comment, "It is this genteel poverty I have managed to drop into," strikes the unavoidable portentous note. Her address, that she can bore herself to death, sounds horrifically ominous. Hedda's growing frustration is much the same as Lady Macbeth's, who begins to feel perturbed by the fact that Macbeth was too full of the milk of human kindness, and she doubts Macbeth's ability to kill Duncan. In much the same way, Hedda is filled with doubts and misgivings, apprehensions and anxiety about the fulfillment of the promise of her illusory life. Hedda shares with Brack her intense disgust about Tesman's sole interest in grubbing in libraries and making copies of old parchments. She confides in him that she has been mortally bored of being everlastingly in the company of one and the same person, which clearly shows that marriage to Tesman held no significance for Hedda. At the same time, it reflects upon Tesman's complete ignorance of such scornful attitude on Hedda's part. Partly, it is this oblivion about the distress of Hedda which leads her into despair. The fact that Tesman is a specialist sounds like a sickening word to her. Hedda's continued mockery, "George Tesman is correctness itself," points towards the relationship being devoid of all love and warmth. Hedda's expressed desire that she longed for someone to make a third on our travels, with a fund of conversation in all sorts of lively topics, then it would be a relief indeed, proves the wide chasm between the husband and the wife. There is no intellectual bonding between the two, thus the estrangement. And who is a witness to all this? Judge Brack, to a large extent. Tesman's love for the indispensable books on his special subjects reveals the fact that although Tesman loved Hedda, but his first commitment was to academics and his scholarly pursuits. Brack's comment, "This is exquisite, and you really care not a rap about it all the time," opens a dangerous quarter for us, leading us to imagine where Hedda's dissatisfaction in marriage may lead her. Is it possible that at one time she could find herself so trapped in Brack's hands, who knows so much about her?